Hi, I'm Melissa Idris and you're watching The Future is Female, the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. Joining me on the show today, I have Qyira Yusri, who is a youth advocate and the co-founder of Undi 18. Qyira, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me today.
Lovely to have you here. Your name was really, in the papers along with Tharmalingam Pillai, who's the co-founder, your co-founder of Undi 18. In the past couple of months, I think you've become a bit of a household name now.
It's a bit odd to be in it, but I think for a good cause, so it's okay.
Right. Well, before we get into the Undi 18 story, which I think is fascinating, how two young people studying abroad decided to say, I want to make a change in Malaysia, and came back and really made a change, right? And saw results. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I kind of want to get to know you first. It seems to me, looking at your background, your CV, you seem to be very passionate about education and youth advocacy. Yep. So how did you get involved in that? I mean, did you always, was that something at home that you kind of learned from your parents, the need to give back, the need to be active in championing social causes?
So to start off, I have to put a disclaimer that I do come from a family of teachers. So my maternal grandmother was a teacher, my mother is a teacher. People said I was going to become a teacher, but high school I was like, nope, I will not become a teacher. Right. But look at me today, I'm in education. So
well, still within.
My mom's like, haha, right? But I think one example vividly that I remember is that I grew up in Miri, Sarawak, because my dad is an engineer. So my mom was a special education teacher. So she teaches kindergarten, but for special education, right?
Oh, wow.
So before we went to Sarawak, Miri, there was no government kindergarten there. And then she went and started. So I'm sure you know, if you are golongan OKU, you get certain allowances from the government and help and welfare. Because her student would come to government school, so most of the kids are from low-income families because they can't afford private centers, right? So, however, I grew up seeing students not getting their welfare money that they deserved and they were entitled to. So I would see my mom marching up and down the district offices and be like, give my kids money. You better make sure these kids have food to eat and things like that. And because my mom was just a teacher, she would get things like, cikgu balik lah. Cikgu, ni bukan hal cikgu. This is not your problem. This is not your issue. These are not your kids. But I grew up seeing that from my mother, and I was very used to having her students come to our house after school on the weekends because their parents would work 2-3 jobs to support their children.
Right.
So I grew up very used to seeing my mom being very selfless and being very just open to help everyone. I think with that idea, I'm just like, if I have this privilege to give back, it seems wrong not to.
Well, you had such a great role model, right?
Yeah,
so you grew up knowing that this is something you had to do.
Correct.
All right, so Undi 18, a movement to lobby for the amendment of the voting age from 21 to 18. And lo and behold, we've seen the results of that. But it's a long story in the making. So while it got a lot of traction this past few months, making headlines and really brought to Parliament and now going to be made law, the work started a while ago, years ago, the kind of sweat behind the scenes. Can you tell us a bit about why you decided to start this with Tharma?
So when we were students in the US, so he studied in Virginia, I studied in Michigan, we were part of this student organization called Malaysian Students Global Alliance, MSG. Through that, we were student leaders, and then we also saw a change across the world. Donald Trump was being elected. Brexit happened. Young people were talking about immigration policies, abortion rights, religious freedom, freedom of speech. And all these conversations was happening around me. Even Malaysian girls were texting me like, oh, I feel so insecure because Donald Trump is elected and things like that, right? So issues like that were being brought up. And we were just talking about, why don't we see these kind of conversations happen so freely in Malaysia? And it's very obvious because, well, one, AWKU was in place.
AWKU, the University,
yes, the Universities Colleges Act, which prohibits students from speaking up on key issues, even university level issues.
Right.
And secondly, the voting age was 21, an age where most people, if they're lucky enough to attain tertiary education, would have graduated and gone working for a job or even getting married. So people don't care about, or you don't have the time and space to care about, right? While abroad, you see universities becoming the hub of intellectual discourse for young people. So we wanted to push for lowering the voting age, mainly because we realized that Malaysia is so far behind when it comes to providing intellectual discourse for young people in a productive manner.
Okay.
So lowering the voting age would give people that avenue to care and to speak up, because by then, when you're a voter, you have no choice but to care about who you're voting for.
Sure. So okay, so that was, I guess, the motivation to do it. And then what happened? So you had this idea, but how did you kind of put it into place?
Yeah. So
make it happen, right?
Yeah. So because of the position we were in as student leaders, we were connected to student organizations from different countries. So UK, Australia, Malaysia, and even Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, China.
Wow.
So we worked with the Malaysian student associations across the world to sign a collective petition to put a referendum to say that, okay, young people around the world, Malaysians around the world, want to do this. We got the endorsements of at least 16 organizations around the world to launch our campaign. And then we started putting up public petitions for people to sign on.
Oh, so it started
like
from an international perspective,
Correct.
moving
Correct.
back into a domestic.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So because we were abroad at that time, and we had this network of young people abroad who all were in different countries, but we all care about Malaysia.
Did you know whether there was a conversation happening in Malaysia?
I mean, we knew Bersih was pushing for it. We knew, for instance, Lim Kit Siang talked about it since 1970s or something, right? Like the real OG when it comes to this kind of issues. But you know, there's no collective voice or focused voice that pushed for just one thing, lowering the voting age. So that's the angle that we went
It was very
through.
specific.
Very specific.
Okay.
We look at one demand, right? Sure, we care about other things, but we have a very specific demand, and that's the constitutional amendment.
Did you guys give yourself a deadline, or like, you know, we want to do this by GE 14?
To be very honest, we started as a student when we were students abroad, right?
Right.
And then we had studies and graduation and exams. So we did all that. So, okay, got a good result. Okay, let's come back to Malaysia. We came back to Malaysia and realized, actually, we can still do this. We can still continue this conversation even though we're not students anymore, because it's an important matter. And the most important thing is, once we're in Malaysia, we have access to politicians that we can lobby to. So we started working our friends and connections. So we started finding who's the SO, who are the officers, you know, please connect me to your boss, please let me talk to your boss. I just have an idea. You know, we would go to forums and have super thick faces and just be like, excuse me, what do you think about lowering the voting age?
I would love to find out more about your advocacy approach. We're going to touch on that right after this. Make sure you stay with The Future is Female. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Future is Female. I'm Melissa Idris. With me, Qyira Yusri, the co-founder of Undi 18. Qyira, so talk to me about your advocacy approach, because when you came back, you decided, okay, I've got to get the stakeholders involved. I can't just be talking, yelling into the ether, right? How did you decide to do this? Because before GE 14, when Barisan Nasional was still in power, you made kind of inroads to try and find some way to make this happen with them.
Yeah. So I think for our cause, we realized that for it to happen, you really need to push for politicians to believe in it. Like it or not, we have to with politicians. It's not enough to just raise awareness about the issue. So we started speaking to politicians from the then government, Barisan Nasional, to talk to them about young people and knowing the voting age.
That would be Khairi Jamaluddin as youth
we managed
minister.
to ask him during a forum, and he said no. But we also spoke to a few other politicians as well, like, you know, getting meetings with them, pitching the idea. Only one politician agreed to help us on, Senator Khairul Azwan. Azwan Bro. So he wrote us a supporting letter to put it on the TN50 canvas. So if you remember the TN50 idea, so there was an open call for ideas to be put on. So we wrote a formal proposal, right? So we went to the formal way of submitting our idea, but we got rejected by the Secretariat, even with a supporting letter from a senator. So then we realized, okay, let's talk to the opposition. However, it was definitely a different situation because it's much easier to reach out to them before this. You could tweet them and they would respond. Nowadays, they still respond probably,
but
you know.
slightly busier.
Yeah, but probably a lot busier, right? You could tweet them, you could get meetings with them easier. So we pitched them and you could tell that they were...
Who was
so a few people that heard us out was YB Nik Nazmi, YB Fahmi Fadzil hopped on it pretty early. And then, of course, Syed Saddiq, YB Syed Saddiq. So he was in Challenger, I think, before he joined Bersatu. So he was a youth organization that pushed for also, you know, many changes. And then he picked it up on social media and made it his own, also like, you know, like he believed in it.
Okay, so he championed it too.
Championed it, correct. So slowly we talked to more politicians, and then we realized, and we saw that they put it on the PH manifesto.
Yes.
And we're like, yes. So
was that a win for you guys?
Definitely,
wasn't it?
because we were like, okay, so if they win, then this is going to be a thing. We can actually work with them. To be very honest, I didn't know they would win. I didn't realize that it would, you know, change so drastically. And then when the election happened, we realized that, oh, so this might actually be a reality.
Right.
So yeah.
No, I mean, it's interesting because there are many things in the Pakatan Harapan manifesto that they haven't yet fulfilled.
Yeah.
But this was a really huge win.
And I think because it's a very obvious non-partisan issue in a sense, right? From the conversations we've had with both sides, and well, now Barisan was easier to talk to after the elections.
Now that they're in opposition.
Yeah, and I think most importantly, they realized that young people are a force to be reckoned with, and you just can't discount them anymore.
Well, okay, talk to me about that, Qyira, because you do a lot of work with young people. You speak to them. You know, you are one of them. You speak the lingo.
For a few more years, yeah.
So what is it that young people are? What is the reality of young people today in terms of the challenges, the disproportionate kind of social and economic opportunities that they may be, I get a lack of opportunity, if I may?
I think the biggest difference is actually because of social media, right? Because information is more accessible to them, people can easily find out what's taken away from them, what's not accessible for them, either education or loans or, you know, what kind of different issues.
Right, because the information is out there.
Correct.
Right.
So you can't hide those anymore, right? You can't go and find a book to do. You just take out your phone, right? So I think with that access to information and young people being more online than other generations, it makes us more connected to the issues, either local or national issues, because we realize that everything that happens, policies, big or small, affects our lifestyle, our livelihood, right? Either our children or ourselves, from education to loans to living costs, housing, and things like that. Yeah.
So, you know, during that whole discussion about Undi 18 and the effort to put that put it through Parliament, there was a lot of discussion about young people not being ready, young people not having an interest in politics, maturity, having a certain level of apathy. What did you make about the arguments? If you could kind of peel it back for us, what were some of the, I guess, the main grouses that people had?
I think the main concerns that people had were that young people were not able to digest information critically.
Okay.
Right? And then that's a valid concern, absolutely. However, evidence shows, Princeton did a university during the Donald Trump election, that people over the age of 40 shared more fake news compared to the younger generation.
That's true.
So when it comes to information, I don't believe that young people are more susceptible. I think if anything, we are equally susceptible across the age group. There's always groups of people that would forward those dodgy WhatsApp messages that cure cancer.
Right.
But if we don't change the legislation to allow young people to vote, that mindset shift will never happen. So it's important as institutions or the government politicians must make the effort to change the existing platform so that subsequently mindset, education, lifestyle, it all will change, and hopefully intellectual discourse would happen across the age groups.
Well, okay, so I also heard during that entire, during that period, there was a lot of people talking about, well, look at overseas voting patterns. You know, young people just don't want to vote. They just don't care about going to the ballot box anymore, or they're disillusioned, disenchanted. What did you make of that?
I think when it comes down, when it comes to the issue, I think we can't use that argument against our young people because we don't even give them a shot yet.
Right, right.
So,
at least give them a chance.
At least
first.
let them try, right? At least give them a platform. And I think the difference between us and young people is that, between us and the countries abroad that people always cite as
low voting voter turnout, right?
Yeah. Do they really mean, like when they mean young voters, they talk about voters who are also adults, right? In Malaysia, 18-year-olds are adults, but we don't even give them the right to vote. So how can you easily discount them when you haven't even granted them that their right to be able to cast a voice? You don't even know what our young people are saying, and you're already dismissing their opinions basing on what you hear from abroad.
It's funny because, you know, Malaysia is a society that tends to look at children and young people with a certain, I guess, a lack of respect, or we discount their thoughts and their opinions. Did you face that when you were in your advocacy work? Did you feel people said, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about?
Yeah.
Because not only is she young, she's also a woman.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 counts, 2 strikes against you already.
I definitely see that in when we do engagement as compared to Tarma, my partner,
All right.
for example.
Do you see a difference?
Of course, definitely. Even as student leaders when we're in the US, I would always be one of the very few young women in the room full of student presidents. They're mostly Malay, they're mostly men. Tarma will be the one of only few non-Malays. I will be the one few non-male person there. And you can see the difference in the way they respond to us. I definitely get more threats online when it comes to online, because our advocacy was mainly online, right? So when you put out something like tweets or opinions, you get rape threats, you get death threats, you get all these kind of things like, you don't know what you're doing, go back to the kitchen. I still get that.
Wow.
While Tarma would get like, oh, you're just really stupid, or you're wrong, or like, you know what I'm talking about.
No one
but
would pick on his gender.
Specific, correct, but it's very specific in terms of the attacks that you see compared to women activists or women advocates online. And you see this most obviously in the Hillary Clinton election as well. She got really ridiculous comments and threats compared to the other male candidates.
And also, picking on her appearance.
Correct.
You would never
You see
that.
that in Malaysia as well. You see that still with our female politicians out there in Malaysia that gets all these different comments. That's very obviously gendered.
Okay, so that was the gender perspective. What about the age perspective? Did you get that, she's young, she doesn't know what she's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, the moment someone says, hey kid, that's when you know, like, okay, you're not even listening to what I'm saying, you're just seeing that with me the lens, right? We definitely got, but I think the good thing is that when you actually confront people or politicians, right, and when you see them disagree, when you ask them, why do you think we're not ready? They'll come up with like excuses like, oh, we're not there yet. Maybe 30 years from now. I'm like, 18-year-olds today and 18-year-olds in 30 years are still 18-year-olds, right? What's going to change from now to there? What changes from 18 to 21? I think young people, we need to keep pressing on whenever we're faced with like pushbacks like these. Because most of the times, the questions are illogical.
Right.
Or
based on a misconception.
Correct, correct. So if you don't push back, and actually, what do you really mean by that? This works for both gendered and ages.
But the thing is, sometimes the pushback is culturally unacceptable. Okay, we're going to continue this conversation shortly right here on The Future is Female. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on The Future is Female. I'm Melissa Idris, with me Qyira Yusri, who is the co-founder of Undi 18. We're talking about young people and, them as an agent of change, right? And sometimes we discount young people. But you also, not just with your work with Undi 18, you also work with Closing the Gap, which is a Teach for Malaysia initiative.
Alumni initiative.
Initiative. So tell me a little bit about this. It's to do with underprivileged children from disadvantaged backgrounds.
So we work with underrepresented children, students who are 17-year-olds, to get them into get scholarships and into selective universities eventually.
Okay, so that's really closing the gap between from secondary and the ability to get into university.
Yeah.
Why is it these children need help?
So I think. As someone growing up in a privileged family, I had the resources to research what I want to do after SPM or after Form 5.
Well, and your mom was a teacher.
My mom was a teacher.
Education, yes.
My mom was a teacher. My dad was an engineer. He got a JPA scholarship to study in the US. So he's like, okay, education is important. He grew up in a low-income family as well, my dad. So he was like, okay, education is what got me out of there.
Right. So, social mobility.
Correct. Social mobility education is so important for social mobility. And I think when I worked in Teach for Malaysia, I met the people that started Closing the Gap, and I'm just like, this is an avenue where like it's about an issue I really care about, and they really help students to get into universities by exposing them to just things like choices, right? Showing them that okay, there are different pathways to get that degree that you want. You're not just resigned to whatever your friends tell you. And most importantly, we also include a mentoring element to it. So each of our students is paired with a young professional to mentor them for 2 years. Right. So the mentoring program is also long-term. They are with us long-term for 3 years because we don't believe in one-off assistance. You got to invest in the students to make sure that they follow through. So this mentoring relationship, as well as the resources and help that we give them, would help them be prepared to compete for merit-based scholarships out there. So there's always two kinds of scholarships available, merit-based and community-based, right? So we want to change that narrative that, you know, you don't have to be, yes, like we want sponsors and funders to think about students' background and where they come from when they take into account who they want to fund, right? Yes, maybe this group of students, all of them has straight A's, right? But is this straight A's, do they really need the help, right?
Okay.
When you take into account
like needs-based help. Okay.
When you take into account how a student struggled to get that straight A's compared to maybe someone, like for instance, like me, right? If I got a good result, it's because I had tuition, I had tennis lessons, I could go swimming whenever I wanted to, right? But there are a lot of students out there that don't get this privilege, and they are at this level. But when you go to scholarship interviews or when you see them in assessments, you see the difference. And I think for us, we want to make sure that funders or sponsors see a complete picture when they want to decide who they want to fund.
So this initiative has been was founded in 2016. So
it was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So what results have you seen? I mean, and what kind of gaps have you identified that you felt like, okay, these are the bits that we need to focus on and help the most?
I think the biggest gap is actually the information gap, right? A lot of students that we work with would be the first in their family to go to universities. So for them, their parents are not aware of what programs are out there. They're not aware of like opportunities, scholarships to apply for.
Okay.
Yeah. Students from our first cohort, we've seen results. We have one student doing a degree in law in IIUM. We have students, pursuing a degree in engineering in UM, USM, and also getting prestigious scholarship like Khazanah Watan, or even scholarships by Alice Smith or Epsom College doing A-levels, OSMED in MCKL.
Wow.
So
prestigious.
we're so proud of them and how far they've come. Wow. And we want to keep working with them so that, you know, they are able to make that choice. Because most importantly, when it comes to education or anything really, right, you want people to have that choice to determine where they want to go and not just resign to whatever's been.
You know, Qyira, I mean, a lot of conversations recently about education in this past, you know, Malaysia Baru, there's been so much focus or hope about, you know, a change in some structural reform of education. You work with young people, you have first-hand experience. If you could, you know, identify a key structure that needed to change in our education system, what do you think it would be?
I wish schools and teachers or head teachers like principals had more autonomy in how they manage their schools.
Oh, why is that important?
Currently, education is very centralized. Everything has to trickle down from the ministry, right? I think teachers and headmistresses know their community the best, right? Education, the most powerful way is like when the people around you, they know your story, they know your context, and then they can help you. I think when it's decentralized, and to a certain extent, when you have more autonomy, you have more freedom to play around with, like, you know, how do you want to actually work with this group or that group?
Right, because you know the problems
of
what's happening.
You can't, you know, when it's trickled down and everything is not the same, right? Schools in Klang Valley and schools in Sabah Sarawak are not the same. So why do we have similar, like, blanket policies for so many things related to education? Right. I think it needs to be more community-based. I think it needs to be more, I need to be more autonomous so that teachers who know their students the best are able to design and be more free in, like, educating their group.
Okay, so empowering teachers who have access to the children and hear the children's stories. Well, Qyira, that's all the time we have.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to you for another hour, but I mean, it's been such a pleasure, and all the best in all the work that you're doing. Thank you for being on the show today. I'm Melissa Idris, and you've been watching The Future is Female. I'll be back with you same time next week. I'll catch you then.